Okay, well, welcome everybody. So on behalf of the organizing committee for NAAHDRI's research committee, as well as engagement with other committees, and of course, Lori and others, welcome to the first Research Accelerator event. This is coming on the heels of about a year and a half's worth of research incubator events where we brought in postdocs and assistant professors and some a little bit more senior and to present their work and then start engaging things like that. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to our moderator, Trisha from the University of Delaware. Welcome.
Thanks so much, and welcome to this really full meeting today. And my Zoom page is already on the second page, so it's wonderful to see so many faces, both new ones and as well as people who I'm familiar with. My name is Trisha Walkendorf. I am a professor of sociology at the University of Delaware. I also direct the Disaster Research Center at UD. And I'm just so pleased to have been invited here by NAAHDRI to facilitate this great panel discussion. Our goal here is to really share some insights and experiences from different directors around the NAAHDRI group, to share some new information with you that might be new to you about how to become a director, the experiences of being director, the joys and frustrations of that process, and to really also think about succession planning for us, right? As a community, wanting to ensure that there is a new generation of leaders stepping into these roles and the things that we can be doing to help facilitate that. So I really want to thank NAAHDRI for taking the steps to put this together. I have a set of questions that I'm going to ask our panelists, and I'm going to go to each and start with each in a different order. And we want to reserve a few minutes at the end of today's session for some questions. What I'm going to ask you to do, if you do have a question that comes up, is to just put your name in the chat. It's going to be very difficult to see people's hands raised or keep track of questions and read it out. So if you could just put your name in the chat and who you have a question for, then we'll go in that order when we get to the Q&A period. With that, I just want to give you a little bit of information about me, because again, I do direct a center as well, and some background about the kind of center that I'm fortunate enough to lead. I actually do that with a co-director. So there's two of us who direct the Disaster Research Center. Our center has been around since 1963. We are on our 60th anniversary. We report to the higher university level, to the VP of Research Scholarship and Innovation. So it's a university-wide center. We have faculty who come from 6 different colleges around campus, 10 that are really active as core faculty, 3 emeritus. We have 6 staff that work with us full-time, as well as postdocs, graduate and undergraduate students. And really a lot of our focus is on 3 main areas: research, and supporting some of the educational programs that are around our campus focused on disasters, as well as a strong emphasis on community engagement. And I'm going to ask each of our presenters to introduce themselves, spend about maybe 2 or 3 minutes talking about how they got into this particular role, the kinds of things they do. And I hope that you can really also share that context about your center or institute. I think that will help some of our discussion that follows, given the fact that we all, some of them might be in a college, or some of them might be in a department. They may have different sizes or missions, and that'll be really important for our very large group to kind of understand and put in context some of your responses. And I'll start with Susan. If you could lead us off.
Great. I'm Susan Cutter, and I co-direct now the Hazards, Vulnerability, and Resilience Institute at the University of South Carolina. We were established in 2006 at the request of the Dean of Arts and Sciences, who wanted to elevate the Hazards Research Lab, which was an internal lab in the geography department, to a research institute with our Commission on Higher Education approval. We have basically no full-time staff. We have a part-time business manager, and historically all of our efforts have been related to our three mission areas. One is training the next generation of hazard scholars, two, conducting innovative and cutting-edge research on resilience and vulnerability metrics, and number three, supporting outreach to state and federal entities in the use of geographic information science in emergency management. We have very little core funding from the university. Administratively, when we set up the institute, it was set up within the Department of Geography, even though we have a university-wide presence and affiliated faculty, because unlike Trish, I didn't want to have it out there without some protection of a department, because it would be very easy to chop it off if funding didn't materialize. And so that's one model. If you keep it small and more in a safer environment like a department, unless they chop off the department, you can still find some resources to get you through. We support both graduate students and undergraduate students on funded work from a variety of different mission agencies and from the state of South Carolina agencies as well as nonprofits. And I'll stop there.
Michelle?
Great, thank you, everyone. I'm Michelle Meyer. I'm the director of the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center at Texas A&M University. We were founded in 1988 by Phil Burke, and Dennis Winger was our first director. So Phil Burke established the center and then hired Dennis Winger to kick it off. I am the fifth director of the center and the first woman to lead the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center. We actually just have a brand new mission statement that's coming out. Our mission does align a lot, as Susan was talking about, research, teaching, engagement. But our new mission statement is that the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center brings together scholars, students, practitioners, and community members for research and educational opportunities that foster disaster-resilient built, social, and natural environments. So with this new mission statement we're working from, we also are a very lean organization. We have one full-time staff member, and then we have 3 research professors that are funded mostly on soft money research projects. And then we have a network of 47 faculty and researchers across the Texas A&M University College Station campus. That represents 6 colleges and 11 departments and 2 of the Texas state agencies as well. Yeah, that's us.
Thank you. Fernando.
Hi, everyone, and I'm enjoying the conversation so far. So I'm Fernando Rivera. I'm a professor of sociology, and I'm director of the Puerto Rico Research Hub, which just, and I'm the founding director also. So we just been in operation for 5 years, which ironically, the date we were going to celebrate, Italia was around, and we had a suspended, and that was August 30th. So kind of like the relevance of all those sort of things. But similar to sort of the missions out here, we kind of have the same, right? So, you know, academic research, I've done a lot of health and disaster research. So that's been kind of like the issue. We strive a lot of giving students opportunities, especially undergrad students, to engage in research and participate on some of the funded projects. Obviously, outreach is a very important part of the mission out here, what we learn. And also partnerships. We learned that we cannot do this alone, and we need sort of not only partnerships within the university and the broader academic community, but also other unusual type of partnerships, including the business sector, governmental officials, all those type of things to make those sure. Obviously, funding is always an issue. I think right now my 5-year mark, I'm looking at the issue of sustainability. How can we sustain this on the long run? And obviously, we do external research. We provide certain things. One of the things that lately the funding we have received, we get appropriations from Congress. So that's one of the big things, and in other models out here in terms of that. So that's sort of a brief overview. And I think in starting this, I had this idea a long time, but I think it was sort of what happened after Hurricane Maria that really elevated this idea to be to really convince the provost and the president and the dean out here. And we also have kind of like this idea. I was in the Department of Sociology when this started. We're in the process of moving into more of a university setting with our international office out here. But it's always, leadership changes to actually impact where you're going to be, where you're going to, if you're still going to be a priority. So that's a constant issue also in thinking about these issues. So I'll leave it there and look forward to the conversation.
Thank you. DeLong?
So my name is Delonzo. I'm the technical director of the National Wind Institute at Texas Tech University. And I'm also the site director of the NSF IUCRC Center for Wind Hazard and Infrastructure Performance here at Texas Tech also. So I talk about the National Wind Institute here. The institute started in 1970. Actually, it's right after the Nabeck tornado, which is one of the most deadly tornadoes that has happened. So what is unique about the institute is that it is a multidisciplinary institute. So we have people from Arts and Science, College of Engineering, from the business school, from people all across the campus to participate in this institute. And we don't belong to any college or department on campus. We are actually directly under the VPR, Vice President for Research office. So it has served the Earth very well to be under this umbrella. And the institute has 3 pillars. One is atmospheric measurement simulation. That's more related to people in the atmospheric science department. And we also have the wind engineering program, which I'm the technical director for. And we also have the energy systems program. So what we do are mainly 2 things. One is to take advantage of the benefiting effect of the wind, for example, wind energy. Another one is to develop solutions to mitigate the negative impact of wind, for example, windstorms, wind hazards. So another thing that's very unique about Earth is that we work with the Wind Science and Engineering PhD program here at Texas Tech. It's the only such PhD program in the country, and there's only another one in the world, which is in Italy. So in this program, we have multidisciplinary core curriculum. We require students to take courses from engineering, science, and also from the business school to prepare to work on convergent research that I think Lori has been pushing a lot, and we like a lot. So I will stop here, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm going to start our next question with Michelle and go in the same order, just so not everyone has to start answering be the first person on board or on deck. And I'd really I think it would be wonderful for the group to hear from you a little bit about your journey to becoming a Center Institute director. Not necessarily the dissertation worth of the journey or the autobiography. And I'm hesitant to necessarily saying deciding to become a director, because I think sometimes there are key moments in our career where it's not necessarily a decision. We might fall into something, fall good or fall bad into something. But reflect a little bit on that journey for you, and what were some of those key points or markers in your career that led you to where you are and directing in this leadership role the way you are as well. Michelle?
Yeah. So I'm assuming we all have very different stories on this one. Mine I knew the values of centers from when I was a graduate student, and got to watch my advisor, Lori Peak, start a center at Colorado State when I was there, and how much centers, really bring attention to the research and the outreach and the goals, and kind of can bring people together. And after that, I had a postdoc here at the Hazard Reduction and Recovery Center under the former director, Walt Peacock. And it's funny, I actually don't know if Walt knows this, but I remember being here thinking, oh, I want his job. And so having been here, I was like, oh, that's great. But I did leave and took a tenure track faculty position at LSU for a while, but it was still in the back of my mind that I wanted to direct a center. And I didn't feel like I wanted to build one from scratch. That felt like it would be too much work. But I wanted to be in a center. I wanted to be part of making those decisions about where a center could grow or go for. And so eventually there was an opportunity that opened back up here at the Hazard Center as Walt was wanting to step down, and I was able to interview for that position and come back.
Thank you, Fernando.
So yeah, so my journey, so I was kind of like I could trace back to being involved as an undergrad in a research center back at the University of Puerto Rico. I think that kind of like opened the eyes of what could be some opportunities. But for me, I had to create my own path in a way. I knew that these issues were important to push it, right? And I was pushing this and I was selling it to as many people as I could. A lot of people said no, so don't give up, keep trying out here. But in my experience, it only took me to be in the Provost's office. I was part of this Provost faculty fellowship that we have here at the University of Central Florida, where you get to spend time with the Provost. And it happened that when I finished that, during that time, Hurricane Maria happened. The Provost knew me. I was sort of put in charge of the response for the whole university while I was dealing with that at the personal level. So it took a major hurricane, me being at the Provost's office, being at the right place at the right time to really get this idea going and sort of make it a priority for the university. I think one of the advice for the junior people, I think I was in the stage of my career that I was an associate professor, and as professors, you rush kind of like to tenure, and you think the skies are gonna open up once you get tenure, and everything that was promised was gonna develop, and then you get out here, it's like, nope, hey, more service. You have to do all those sort of things. So I was certainly looking for the next challenge out here in terms of that. But being in the sort of having been exposed to that administrated, upper level type of discussion out here in terms of looking at that, how things get done. And actually, I really went to that provost position, and I had served as associate chair for my department as well. I wanted to resolve conflict. That was sort of my intention out here in terms of that. How do I deal with conflict and when people, don't agree with you and all sort of stuff? And I have plenty of opportunities of people screaming at me for stuff that I didn't have anything to do with it, and I had to come up with the provost and that would resolve those type of things. But I think those opportunities. But I have to emphasize that, in this process, I was an associate professor, but my number one goal at that time was to become a full professor. And I didn't lose track of that, because sometimes we get pushed into positions a little early on in our careers, and then that makes it really difficult, because especially the ones that are in state universities, anytime, anything can go really fast, and all that service, everything that you do, they're going to say nice, but there's no protection for you. So I would say, your professional goals out here in terms of that, I will certainly push out here that, reach the top of your profession out here, or have a plan that if you're gonna embark on this administrative leadership roles, that you actually have a plan to achieve that level, because that protects you and that protects your scholarship.
Thank you, DeLong.
So I actually was asked to be the technical director by our senior director here. So I was very happy being the regular faculty, just doing my research, look at the wind loading on structures and the loading effects and so on. But I could not say no, because the National Wind Institute has a long history of excellence. The people before us did a wonderful job to establish the reputation and so on. And I felt I shared a lot of common vision with both the leadership and other people on the leadership team, and also the wonderful faculty here. So I just thought maybe I can contribute to the visions and further contribute to the further development of the center. So I just could not say no. So that's pretty much why I'm in this role.
Susan.
Well, I had a very different path. I was hired at the University of South Carolina in 1993 to chair the Department of Geography. So I was an external hire to chair Department of Geography. Prior to that, I was at Rutgers University and was in a department with my colleague, Ken Mitchell. And Ken Mitchell and I divvied up the hazard world, where he did natural hazards and I did technological hazards. So when I moved to South Carolina and I moved into the geography department, there was no real environmental focus here, let alone a hazard focus. And I had to learn all about natural hazards in addition to tech hazards. And so one of the first things I did was to develop a link with the emergency management in the state, because we are a very poor and small state. And that linkage with emergency management and the strength of the department that I came into, GIS, enabled us to develop very strong partnerships, because my colleagues in the department were training all of the GIS people in state government. And when we started to merge that with hazards, we were training people in emergency management. We didn't start the Institute. It started out as just a lab, a very small lab, where the 3 or 4 students that I had, we could get together and we just wanted an identifier. And so we called ourselves the Hazards Research Lab. And so we would go off and do great things. Every time there was a disaster somewhere, we figured out a way to go look at it. We did 9/11. We went to Mississippi with Hurricane Katrina, and we started to get a lot of traction and a lot of interest. And we were one of the few geographically based centers at that time that were using this new technology. And in 2005, after I had stopped being chair, and the dean, she was a new dean, said, "You have this really wonderful thing. We want to elevate it. We want to make it an institute." And that's how we became an institute. But we've never gone full force into it with having full-time staff. We're really run on a shoestring with graduate students and undergraduates and affiliates across campus, from engineering to law, who pop in and out when we have projects or when we want to put together proposals and things like that. So it's very small, but I like to think we're very powerful.
I'd also like to add that Susan has been a role model for so many of us over the years. So I do want to thank you for your leadership and something for those of us who are center directors to really try to model ourselves after.
And your co-director was a graduate student at Rutgers when I was there. So some of us have been around a little too long, I'm afraid.
You've had a very significant impact. I see a lot of great comments and introductions starting in the chat. Again, this isn't a webinar. This is really a meeting, and I want to encourage you to do that. Many of us know the value of social capital in disasters. Having others see who you are, posting a link from the program or the center that you're in, those are great things to do. So I want to encourage you to do that. If you do have a question in there, please just note that it is a question, so I don't miss over that opportunity when we do get to the Q&A. So just say that question over here. I now would like to start with are we at Fernando starting? I think, yeah. To share with the group a little bit about what you find rewarding in the position, kind of the best part of your job, or what gives you joy or strength throughout the day, as well as to share maybe something that you find more challenging or difficult that has really stretched you as you've continued in this leadership role.
Absolutely. I do really enjoy working with students and get them involved with these topics, right? Getting them from like a research idea all the way when they can publish something, go on to grad school, go on and be better people and all sort of stuff. And I can share a story, right? I was walking around my neighborhood yesterday and somebody stopped me and said, "I saw you on TV, you're doing great work." And that was, some of the unexpected type of things that you get out here. I think always the challenge is especially, a lot of this research, especially in state universities, right, is always providing the value that you bring out here. It's always a challenge to sort of make everybody happy with what you do. And funding is always sort of the issue that you have to come back, right, in terms of that. Which, if there's any millionaires on the call that want to give a hefty check out here, more than happy to provide. But I think that's kind of like the unexpected aspect of it, right? That, I don't think in grad school they teach you to fundraise or do all those type of things, but it's becoming more and more apparent that we cannot sustain this type of efforts just by the usual allocation that we had in the past from state funding and allocations of research funds. So, that's probably a big challenge as well.
Yeah, I think we'd all like to give our routing number if there are millionaires on the call. Or centers are happy to receive that. Dulong, could you share your perspectives on things that you really enjoy and aspects that are really that you find a little bit challenging?
Sure. I think what I enjoy the most is to be able to, develop ideas with my colleagues, to undersee some ideas come into fruition. And that's the most important to me. And also, being on this job, I was able to work more with the people on the campus, the other parts of the university, and also our collaborators outside of Texas Tech. So to get their perspectives and a lot of things I never thought about, and some bigger ideas, to organize some activities, for example, workshop to develop a research synergy with people from different universities, different backgrounds. I really enjoyed that. So some of the difficulties, I think it's sometimes you think things can run a little faster, but actually because of some bureaucracy involved here, there, it doesn't really go very fast. That's one that I found out. Another thing is, these days people tend to want fast results, but sometimes you just don't have the system to enable you to have the fast results. So there are some conflicts there being, in this role. Sometimes you have to balance. And also, sometimes you have to balance your own research with this Sometimes it's a service activity or leadership activity. So these are some of the things sometimes I struggle with, but I think, gradually you kind of get used to some of these things. So that's my my experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
I think the greatest joy is on the educational side of things, where you are teaching a subject matter that you enjoy teaching, and interacting with students that you enjoy, that mentorship, but also recognizing that you are in fact making a difference, and you're making a difference to those lives of those students, but you're also making a difference in helping the state where you live, the community where you live, and the country in which you operate. What I find most challenging, I think, like anyone, is reconciling the funding with the available human capacity that we have, and the fact that it's never constant. And there are times when, believe it or not, you have more funding than you have bodies to give the money to. And other times you have more bodies and not enough funding. And that discrepancy sometimes gets you a little nervous as a director of a center, because the last thing you want to do is tell students you can't fund them, or if you have to lay people off. So reconciling funding with the available support, staffing, basically, I think is one of the challenges. But that challenge in and of itself always keeps you on the treadmill, because you're always having to look for those kinds of resources. And you just get tired because there aren't more than 24 hours in a day.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yeah, I would say the best part of the job here at the Hazard Reduction Recovery Center, we've asked folks like how they might describe us in like one word who's been here, and we asked some alumni and stuff like that, and some of the common words were home or family. And so providing that place of connection in a giant university for people to feel like they have real colleagues, they have trusted friends, they have people who care about them beyond just their academic productivity. That's been really rewarding, and that's been allowed us to be capable of, we've had faculty who come and have no idea about disaster research or hazards, but they don't quite get connected where they wanted to or where they thought they might. And then we're like, hey, you could study that in a hazard context. Why don't you come on over? And then they are amazed at the like connection, the writing the grants together, like DeLong said, like the working with students and the different opportunities of bringing everybody together. So that's probably the best part of it, is feeling like you're part of a close-knit group that actually really cares about each other and cares about the mission. I have to agree with everybody else on the hard parts. I think we're all singing the same song. And in my introduction, I missed out on saying where we are. So starting last September, I think, we got moved down from the college level to the Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning at Texas A&M. When our center started, we were at the VPR level, and different presidents come in and decide they don't like centers or they do like centers, and so they move them around. And so now we are at the department level, and we have a very collaborative department head, so that's very good for us. Of course, that could change. So the challenge there is it feels like we're constantly having to prove our worth within our own institution, Whereas in the larger research community, I feel like we don't have to prove our worth. We're showing that we're good at what we do. But it seems like and there's not a standard metric either. You get a different leader, they want a different metric. They want this metric, they want that metric. And it's kind of hard to keep up with all of that changing drama that happens in universities.
DeLong, we'll start with you for the next question. And I'm hoping that you could perhaps share one thing that really surprised you about this role. If somebody is a junior scholar or they haven't been a director before, there might be an assumption about some things and questions that they don't know to ask. What's one thing that really surprised you in your position?
Actually, if I may, I will say two things. One thing is really how much time it really takes. I think it probably is common to everybody. Another thing I probably touched it just now. It's sometimes how fast people want the result, and sometimes the support system is not necessarily there. So sometimes you have to juggle things. You want to have big ideas, but then there's no patience for that. So there's really conflict sometimes. I didn't realize how much that could be when I was a regular, just doing my research. But then once you are in this role, you realize more about this. I think that's for me. Thank you.
Susan?
I think the biggest surprise that I've had is an unexpected role as a public educator, in particular educating the media, because when a large event happens, you get the phone calls from the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and oftentimes they have no idea what to ask you. And learning how to say, listen, if I were you, and they ask you not very informed questions because it's not their area. So I learned very quickly to turn it around and say, if I were you and I was asking me as someone in this field about this particular event, this is what I would ask. And it never occurred to me that not only are we educators within our own institutions, but we have a role as a public educator when we're talking to the mass media. And one of the greatest joys, I think, of my career was when Hurricane Katrina happened and the media obviously was everywhere. And I knew it would happen, and I was thrilled that it did. It didn't matter who they were talking to. It could have been Shirley Laska or Kathleen Tierney or Dennis Milletti or Walt Peacock. The message was the same. The information that was given out was the same. And it really highlighted the integrated nature across disciplines of those of us working in the disasters field. The public and the media were not getting conflicting stories depending on who they interviewed. And we had no idea. I mean, we were just talking from our experiences and interactions. This was not pre-scripted. And so it was one of those joyous aha moments that we are a very large integrated community, whether or not we think we are. When those major events, signal events happen, people are on the same page.
Michelle?
I think surprising would probably be just how small our budgets are. how much of a shoestring we are for most of us. That we might be, you know, on the outside, it looks like, oh, look at that multi-million-dollar grant, right? But all of that is assigned away to specific costs that it has to be spent on. And then when it comes back to what the center itself is supposed to do, we're operating on half pennies of those dollars, or quarter pennies, like of those dollars that we bring in. I think that's been one piece that's been surprising, and how that, like, you could be really successful at getting research, but it doesn't necessarily mean then that the center is going to have the financial foundation it needs to keep going. Like, you have to have these other kind of entrepreneurial actions that you're undertaking, and activities, and the personality and ambition to make that kind of happen, to keep a center alive and funded and going. That's probably been the most surprising of, and I think it's a testament to how much we're all committed to our missions, that we do a lot with very little, and make sure that our missions are accomplished.
I have one more question that I wanted to do a quick round through. And again, I want to encourage people to, if they have a question, if they've thought of something that hasn't been addressed so far, to please just put your name in the chat, and we'll get to you in our last few minutes. We'll start back with Susan again. And I just would like to see if you have one bit of advice for people who are thinking about moving into this role, that they see it something either in the short term or the long term that they'd like to strive towards. What's one bit of advice that you would pass along to them?
The one bit of advice I would give is to think very much as an entrepreneur. You are not going to be given the resources. You are going to have to earn them, and you're going to have to find ways of finding those pots of money. And one of the ways that you can do it is when you come into the position, and you can do something like, well, I would be happy to lead this center, but I need a percentage of the indirect costs that we generate to come back in a open account that I can use to run the center, not run research projects. So that would be one thing to think very, very entrepreneurially about how you are going to fund and to use whatever leverage you have coming into the position to do that.
Michelle?
I would say learn the ropes, the internal ropes of your university. You may think you know them as a faculty member, but you don't know them. Learn all those internal dynamics of your university, and every university is different in how they do it. And so really learn those. And also, and this might be specific to only my university, but learn also that everything is negotiable. So as you might seem like, oh, that's that way. No, well, maybe not. Maybe if I push and I ask and I, work it around, I might be able to get something different.
Fernando?
I would say, and going along the lines of what Susan was saying before, I think you have to learn to be a public person. And, sometimes you get judged not by what you say, but actually what you do, sort of your involvement with the community, how you treat people, learn how to manage teams. In grad school, they tell you, just concentrate on your work and work individually and be an individual scholar. But now you have to create those conditions as well. And I think those are important. And I think nowadays, another thing that, you have to be careful is what you post on social media, the things you say out there. You never know what innocent comment you thought it was innocent that is going to come back to haunt you. So you have to be very careful, because whether you like it or not, you're the public face, and every time a disaster happens, they're going to come at you and ask you questions and all sort of things. So, I think it's gonna learn a little bit of diplomacy and let your research actually do the talking, and your opinions, keep it to your family and friends. you don't have to share those on the World Wide Web. There's no upside of it. And I know that we have a new generation of TikTok, Snapchats, and X and whatever it is, but I will be careful with those.
And DeLong.
I think what I will say is be patient. Actually, I'm very bad at this, but we have a very good role model here, which is Professor Kishore Mehta here. I try to learn from him, learn the patience from him, but I'm not very successful. But I think I can pass his wisdom down to the audience that to be in the leadership role, we really need to be patient about a lot of things.
Great. So we're going to open it up for questions. Thank you for all those words of wisdom. I'm sure there's many more that we could pass along. And I'm going to ask, if I call on you, just to be succinct with your question, if you could direct it towards a particular panelist, that would be wonderful as well, just to make sure that we give everyone a chance for feedback. Alicia, I think we're first on the list.
Oh, did you ask me? I'm Kailas. I was the first to. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you. What's your question and who is it?
Oh, okay. Thank you. So first of all, I understand this session is for North America Alliance of Hazard and Disaster Research Centers, and most of the people are from the universities. But I'm from India. I'm from the International Emergency Management Society India chapter. I'm the co-founder and working trustee, and earlier I started IAEM India chapter. So my question is, we have been doing very good work, and particularly about research, but I'm not able to get a core group of people to devote their time to build up the organization and move forward, which is a big challenge. Although we have done a lot of good work, we organized first time a workshop on higher education, which was 6 organizations, and we are disaster management partner of world's biggest literature festival, Jaipur Literature Festival. So if somebody could, or if anybody of the faculty or others, they are willing to help me or join and devote their time. Time is the main resources, and getting the group, some core group who can, build up the organization and move forward. And one thing I want to add, with Lori is listening, and I've discussed with Lori that quick response research program we want to start in India. So I have met the National Disaster Management Authority member secretary, and I've told him this idea that Canada is the model and we can start. So he was also interested. Thank you. And it is midnight here in India time.
Thank you so much. And is there anyone who would like to comment on this real challenge of getting a core group of faculty together in not just focused on a particular project, but to working in a sustained way on an effort, and really having that become a center or an institute or a hub of some kind that lasts more than one particular project? Anyone on the panel?
If no one's going to respond, I'll give it a tip to everyone staying quiet. Of course, I stepped into a well-oiled machine here at the Hazard Reduction Recovery Center. But there has been some really cool research I've been reading lately from Hannah Love at Colorado State about what makes for good teams and the big importance of knowing each other as people. And there's some projects that I've been invited to that, like, most of the time you just focus on just the work and getting the work done. And that doesn't make anybody want to really stick around. So I guess one thing that we might not think of to try to get people to dedicate their time is to be sure that you're friends with them, or you're working with people and making, good, close relationships with folks, so that they're willing to spend their time with you to reach the same mission. That's one idea.
Michelle, may I respond?
I'm gonna move on to the next question, just in the interest of time, because we do want to end at 1. But feel free to type in the chat, or to follow up as well. We can have a side conversation going too. But thank you for that really important question. Jen Henderson, I believe you have a very timely question as well, about sociopolitical challenges. Did you want to ask it, or should I pipe in? I see you there.
You're free to pipe in. Thank you.
Sure. So she was curious about the directors, and how all of you navigate the sociopolitical challenges at the state and federal level that might impact your center, your lab, or your research, or the research of people who are members of your center. Anyone want to pipe in on that? Again, I think there might be some states that are navigating this more acutely than others at the moment.
Being one of those red states, I can chime in on that. I think the way to navigate it is to show how you are facilitating and helping the state, irrespective of the political context that you're working in. Disasters are sort of equal opportunity effects, and some groups are disproportionately affected, but at some point everyone is. And I work with social vulnerability, which is one of those areas that can come under some call out by certain states and by some of the federal legislation now that doesn't allow you to include certain characteristics in metrics. And so what you have to do is you have to put your hat on as your public educator and educate the people in your state legislature about the importance of the work you're doing and how it benefits everyone in the state, and how it doesn't privilege one segment of society over another. And we've been able to do that fairly well in South Carolina, despite its political leanings.
Quickly, I'm in Florida too, so and Michelle, you're in Texas. We're going through those things. I think it's an issue of how you communicate and put these things forward. There's sometimes we tend to be very emotional and we preemptive before we even know what matrix they're gonna put to do these things. You have to kind of like understand the political process of why people do these things. And the importance of the work that you do. If you let the work that you do speak for yourself, that's a way to go around it. I know it's frustrating. It makes for harder working conditions. But life is sometimes it gives you those curveballs out here that you have to use your training towards that, and sometimes keep doing the good work and continue to pass along that message.
We have another question that builds off of something Michelle explained or started to touch on in her earlier comment, and really just to get a little bit more of a sense about how you go about creating a home for the group of either students, staff, or faculty, or community partners that you engage with regularly. Does anyone want to pipe in on that? How you really get that it's a center and a place where people want to come and be involved in, versus just a kind of a disjointed place that people might run their grants through or pop in. How does it become their intellectual home or social or community or educational home?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge. And we do have, out of the 47 faculty I named, probably only 20-ish of them are like really engaged in the Hazard Center. Others come over every once in a while for a few projects and whatnot. And in terms of like trying to really build that, informally, we spend a lot of time together at happy hours or have birthday cakes, try to do some of that like standard office stuff. We have lunch together, like even if it's brown bag, we're bringing our own lunch, but we can sit around and have lunch together and spend time together so that we're not just talking about work. And then also when we have somebody new, we really try to share as many of these opportunities with them, like get them connected to the hazards workshop at University of Colorado Boulder to make sure they know that this is a community and this is where you can like really check in and find your people, come to these different events and kind of give that extra attention when new folks join us, so that they know that they can come and talk to us and work through that. And I would think, yeah, a lot of it is like some version of emotional intelligence to like, care about people and what they're doing outside of the world. And we talk about our pets a lot or our kids. And, we have a lot of our events are where kids are welcome. And so families can bring their children to those events and things like that. That's what I got.
We have a field trip that we do when there's a new disaster movie that comes out. And so we close the Institute for the afternoon because we have to go see the latest Dante's Peak or Twisters or San Andreas 2. And so they plan that. They see the trailers coming out and say, okay, when it comes out, let's make sure we have an organized field trip and we go see a disaster movie.
I'm going to jump in. We have a question from Yang Zhang. If you could unmute yourself, and this might be our last.
Thank you, Trisha. Appreciate Yang from Virginia Tech. My question is for all four panelists. So you all mentioned your mission statement, basically 3 pillars: research, teaching, and engagement. So do you see any disconnection between your mission statement and the assessment metrics that you were given by university? Thank you.
Great. We all have to sort of come in and judge ourselves or evaluate or report back.
Yeah.
Anyone want to take that?
Well, I've been very intentional in following whatever the strategic plan points are for the university and those metrics, and really align some of the activities so they can touch upon those metrics that the university does actually have. And kind of like right now from my university is high impact practices for students. So we emphasize on our research and the opportunities that we give, and postdocs. And so we write postdocs in our grants, so we touch upon those. So that's a way to kind of like have the mission, and really you can say, go back in your report and you're contributing to, whatever, because that's tied to state funding as well. So it's a win-win situation.
I want to be mindful of time to our organizers today. I see that we are at 1 minute to 3. And I really want to thank all of our panelists for sharing some of their thoughts and ideas. I want to encourage everyone on the call to reach out to us if you have additional questions, in addition to some of the other directors that may be on the call. And really not see this as an end of a conversation, but the beginning of one, especially as you think of questions that might pop up tomorrow or next week or in a year from now. I'm going to turn it back over to John, I guess, to close us off.
Actually, Lori, I'll pass to you if that's okay. Once you close, since I opened.
Absolutely. So just an enormous thanks to Grace and John and Jamie, who chair the research committee for NAAHDRI, and Trisha, Susan, Fernando, Michelle, and DeLong. Thank you for sharing your insights, wisdom, opportunities, and honest challenges. This was so insightful, and we will post the recording on the NAAHDRI page for the Research Accelerator events, and it was just so great to see all of you here today. So thanks to everybody who joined, and again, an enormous thanks to the panel. As Trisha said at the beginning, we hope this is the start to a much broader conversation and definitely not the end, because we want to do everything we can to facilitate and foster and bring up the next generation of leaders who are going to help sustain the power of this field. So thank you to everybody, and happy Friday, and have a wonderful, safe, restorative weekend. We will see you all soon. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.